Now let us try to understand the first type of array concept implementation in Python, which is called list. So list is possibly the most basic and most straightforward implementation of array concept in Python, where you can basically utilize a variable name like list1, list2, list3, or any name of your choice, A, B, C, your name, my name, whatever it is. And then you have to follow this syntax in order to store some group of elements inside this list. So just look at these syntax, whatever I have written here. So if you want to store few elements in the array, what you have to do, first you have to write the variable name like list1 in here. In the first example, it is list1, then followed by this equals symbol over here, and then after the equal symbol there is a opening and a closing box bracket, and inside this box, opening and closing box bracket, you have to specify each data item that you want to store, separated by this comma, like this way. So what is the meaning of this first declaration? That is list1 equals, and then inside opening and closing box bracket, and inside that 5, 9, 22, 6 separated by comma. What is the meaning of this? The meaning is in the index 0 of list1 variable you are storing 5, just like this. This is the index 0, and here you have stored 5. Then at index 1 you have stored 9. So just like as you can see in this picture, at index 1 you have stored 9. The same way at index 2 of the list 1 you have stored 22, what you can see in here. And again the same way in the index 3 of list 1, so this was 2, and in index 3 of list 1 you are storing 6, like this way. So this is the syntax to store some item inside a list, and you can see the same type of syntax in list 2 as well as in list 3. So this is how you can store the elements. Now one more characteristics of Python list item. So in list 1 and list 2, if you look at very carefully, I have used all the same type of data item. Like in list 1, all the data items are of type like integer. Then in the next, like list 2, everything is like a string, or more specifically you can call that all the data item here are like a single character, like this way. But when you are working with Python list, you really do not need to restrict yourself to this. You can store any type of data item inside a list. For example, you can take a look at this list 3. So this list 3 is actually a mix of all different types of data item. For example, the first one is a single character, then the second one is a floating point number, then the third one is basically an integer, and the second one is a regular text, like this. And you can store all the variables just following the similar syntax as we discussed before, and as you can see in here. So the first, the variable name, the list name, then an equal symbol, and then inside an opening and closing box bracket, you have to write down all the data items that you want to insert, separate each of them separated by a comma. So that is how you can store items inside a Python list, any type of item. Now, how can you access all the items in a list, or how can you print all the items in a list? So the first method is basically print list 1. So like this. Here actually I have just used the print function, and inside that I wrote list 1. That will print all the members of this list, like 5, 9, 22 and 6, like this way. So that's one method. But sometimes it is required to access each individual element of the list. For example, let's say in list 1, I want to individually get the value stored at index 0, or individually I want to get the value stored at index 2. For many different operations it is required. So at that time what you can do is you can use this type of syntax, as you can see in here. So here basically I have used the list name or the list variable name, then followed by again an opening and closing box bracket, and inside that you can write down the index number, which one, whose value you want to access. So what this program will print, so this program basically starts at index 0, right? So next what will happen, so then there is a while loop which is going until 0, 1, 2, 3, that is less than 4, as you can see in here, 1 less than 4. So it is going until 0, 1, 2, 3. So in the first iteration what it does is it basically print the value at list 0 because it is initialized to 0, and it will print basically 5. Then in the next iteration, well, this is list 1. So then in the next iteration, it should print the value of list 1 at index 1 because index is already incremented by 1 in here in the end of this loop. So here list 1 at index 1 is basically 9. Then in the next iteration it will again increment the index by 1, that is index will be 2. So it will print the value of index 2 at list 1, which is basically 22. And at the final iteration what it will do is it will just print the value at index 3, which is basically equal to 6. So by utilizing this simple while loop and this index counter, by using index in here, I can basically print 5, 9, 22 and 6. So this is the very basic operation of a list, what you can do. So you have learned how to store data item in a list and also how you can print the data items in a Python list.